Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium presents Danusha Laméris and Maria Teuch, recorded live via Zoom on Sunday, September 13th, 2020.
Who will praise the dust? Not usually me. We are usually trying to get rid of it. And that's another secret, isn't it, of poetry, is that it's not that we just love everything, it's that we're trying to love it a little bit more. And I find often when I write a poem, it's precisely because of that. It's because there's something I'm trying to love. So that said, maybe I'll read my poem about mosquitoes, which wasn't on the playlist, but seems relevant. I didn't quite track when we started. I want to say it was at 2:10. So Robert, keep me honest.
You're doing great. You got at least 20 minutes, so you're good.
Okay, so I'll keep going, but I'm going to look at my clock and be mindful of it too, as best I can. Mosquitoes. Thin buzz of hunger. Constant hum. At night, I drape a net around my bed just to keep them away. They like the flesh above my ankles best, and then the sweetness of my face. The Buddhists say we mustn't want to kill another living thing. How often have I taken one, crushed it in my palm? The saint said the lion is in love with the gazelle it hunts. I love salmon. So I saute their bodies with garlic and butter, slip the moist flesh into my mouth. Haven't I bitten my beloved until a pink stain colored the skin? A tiny drop of blood is all they crave. Is that so much to ask? And they are so devoted. Groupies at the backstage door, a band of Hare Krishnas wailing in the street, cherubim playing their small harps without cease, as they are said to do in heaven. Only this is not heaven. I dream of a night without blemish, of love without the sting. But here they are, a mini mariachi hovering outside the net, singing their same old high-pitched serenade. Volver, volver, they cry. The song about the one that got away. Trying to love those mosquitoes. You know, there's a lot of garlic and butter on the brain, clearly, because I feel like that's come up at least twice in the past 10 minutes. So you all are learning other things about the poet. Things other than what we expected. Let's see what I want to read. I want to read this poem about hawks. I'm going to read this. Inverness, such an incredible place, and with so many birds. How many of you have been up there above San Francisco? A number of you. Oh my gosh, you know, kind of a heaven on earth. And I was there with some friends years ago who taught at UCSC and their little daughter. And this poem describes what she said and what she did when we went outside to look at the marsh and the bird sanctuary area. She said something to me and I sounded kind of like a dare, and I took her up on it. So let me, I'll read you this. It's such a wild thing about a 4-year-old girl and me and some hawks. Hawks for Luna. It was late afternoon, and we were standing on the deck overlooking the gray swath of the Pacific when my friend's daughter, then 4, turned to me and pointed at the hawks flying in the distance. I can call them if I want, she said, tilting back her head to let out a long, fierce caw which floated up over the marsh and above the trees. At first, nothing. Then a slash in the distance. And in the next moment, there it was, nearly above us, wings spread wide, the color of rust. And then another, the two floating in silent circles while she sounded her cries, the primal cry of the human, raw and plain. the call to prayer, the weeping at the wall, the singer's highest, most broken note. Whatever it is, we send up into oblivion waiting. Haven't I too called out? Haven't I beseeched something winged to do my bidding? And here she was calling, and here they came in answer, a hinged assembly hovering toward us on the wind. 10? 20? Enough to darken the heavens above where we stood, waited in place, pinned by a cover of raptors, bone swallowers, snake eaters, sharp-sighted angels of prey, their scaled feet clutching the empty sky. So the next thing that happened, of course, was that I grabbed her and took her inside because hogs are so big. They really have like a 4 to 6 foot. I mean, am I making that up? Wingspan. And they were practically blocking out the sun. She called so many of them. And kind of the wild addendum to that story is that I sent her this poem after she just graduated Yale a couple years ago. Smart, gifted kid. And she took a long time to answer me. I thought, oh, I hope she doesn't feel weird that I wrote about this. And actually what she was doing was composing a poem, which she sent to me. And it was really good, this poem. But it was about how she'd forgotten what it was to be that girl, how we forget parts of ourselves, and especially that sort of childhood wild one that maybe can talk to the birds. I like the person creeping behind Maria. That's really sorry. But about how we forget something elemental about ourselves and some kind of power that we're maybe born with. So I loved that. I loved that that's what she got from that, and that's what she wrote about. I think I'll do another bird one, and then maybe I'll start winding up. I feel like we're at around that point. 1 or 2 more, you think, Robert?
Yeah, that's great.
Maybe 1 or 2? Okay, so let me see.
Please.
Okay. So maybe I'll do 2, because it's fun to try out poems, too, that I haven't read to humans, that are new. And we have a couple of those. This one is called Regret, with the R in parentheses. I see the word egret, but read instead regret. A trick of the mind, its reversals. One, a white slash rising from the marsh. The other, a stone strapped to the heart. The way I've carried all the would haves, all the ifs. Each alternate exhausts. The egret wades in the dark water, seeking fish. The heart, constancy. I doubt the egret has regrets. Hatch, fledge, breed, hunt. And besides, a lovely name that comes from French. Aigrette, for brush. After the long feathers that stream down its back, how do its legs, bent reversed, move ahead? Who wouldn't want to move like that? There are days I step outside my body, arise, fly over the field of my life, and glimpse not error, but river, rock, and oak, a wide expanse. Here and there a meadow, dry grass dotted with, could they be poppies? Some bright blurred orange flame. I guess now it's actual flame. If we're looking down, you're seeing actual flame if you're in California. It's weird when you read a series of poems to realize your obsessions, and today it's clearly marshes with birds and then also garlic butter. So, just noticing that. I just want to own that. Okay, and here's one that's coming out somewhere soon, but I don't know how many of you spent your whole summers barefoot, but I know I did, and it was amazing. And yeah, so I wrote about it. Barefoot. I learned the world through the bottoms of my feet, bare in the creeks of summer, stepping on pebbles, the squidge of moss between my toes. Or on hot asphalt, the hop and skip over cracks, feet already toughened by brambles, dirt, and the prickly ground of pine needles, calloused and ready to roam the rough halls of July, of August, of early September, through acres of blackberry sprouts and bristled fountain grass, the spiny clumps of cocklebur and foxtail, through clusters of quartz, agate, feldspar, small black ants crawled over my toes, fish nibbled at them in the skinny creek. It wasn't summer until I'd been bitten, ankles pocked with the raised bumps left by mosquitoes, flea bites from Toof Toof the cat, who liked to roam the field and settle back in the shag rug, where I'd sink my feet into the plush pile before roaming down to the beach, the fine round sand, cutting myself on loose shards of glass left by broken beer bottles, sharp-edged shells that dug into the fatted flesh above my instep, as I skimmed for washed-up abalone, oyster shells, sidestepping the glutinous bodies of jellyfish, past crusted bulbs of kelp, their long tubed stems buzzing with flies. Sometimes the body of a dead seal, the peppered fin curling into itself in the heat. Back on the grassy slope, I'd marvel at how I could feel a gopher stirring underground from yards away. That slight rumble in the earth. This was foot knowledge, heel knowledge, knowledge of soul and arch, that domed curve, vaulted nave. Everything that entered, sanctified, holy. So thank you all for listening to those poems and for being here, poetry today. I really appreciate it. And somehow we came around to the mosquitoes again. Go figure. Go figure. Thank you.
That was wonderful. And now we're back, for me anyway, in our Brady Bunch layout. I did see somewhere on the web someone saying, "Oh, how did the Brady Bunch have Zoom?"
How'd they know? It was ahead of their time.
How did they know? But thank you. Yes, we're having salmon tonight. I'm going to use garlic and butter on that salmon. Thank you.
Thank you for honoring that impulse.
For the suggestion. And I really enjoyed it. Baking of bread, the aroma is what gets to me. Fresh baked bread. It's like freshly made coffee. It's absolutely fantastic. So thank you. And I like the congratulations on Garrison Keillor reading your poetry. He does have built-in pathos.
Doesn't he?
And a gravitas of sorts. But I like that your reading today had within it built-in joy.
Well, thank you. Okay, thanks for reframing that. I don't have to have built-in pathos.
Yeah.
Built-in joy.
We can have that. The built-in joy is what we have today, and it's great in these times. And you're right. Poets are trying to love. And it's hard to do that when times are not conducive to that. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Appreciate it. And now we'll go to Berlin. I didn't mention, for those of you who may have joined us lately, we have folks, Maria is in Berlin. Some of us are on the West Coast, and we've got folks in the Carolinas on the Outer Banks and in Asheville. So it's a wonderful global reading today. Our next poet is Maria Garcia Teuch, whom many of you know. And she's a poet, an educator, and a performance artist. I don't think we're going to get the performance part today, but maybe we will. She's published over 25 books and journals of poetry as editor-in-chief of the Homestead Review, published by Hartnell, College in Salinas, which is a marvelous review. And the Ping Pong Journal of Art and Literature, published by the Henry Miller Library in Big Sur. She's been the editor-in-chief there too. She teaches poetry and creative writing at Hartnell College, is a member of the faculty, and thanks to the current situation is able to do that remotely from Berlin, which is truly wonderful. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of Ping Pong Free Press and publisher and editor-in-chief of Poet Republic with a K Limited. Her collection, The Revolution Will Have Its Sky, won the Minerva Rising chapbook competition judged by Heather McHugh, who is in and of herself quite a poet. Maria's website is at marialoveswords.com. It's a great website, and I've gone on there too and spent time playing with that. It's a wonderful experience, but not as good. We're going to get it live and in person. So Maria, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and yeah, it's such a crazy time, but it's so nice to have this opportunity to be able to have, you know, some of my best friends here, and to be able to be here, and then also get to hear Danusha read, and yeah, so I'm very happy with this mode. I think that everything will change now, and I think that that's okay, because we don't have any choice. But poetry and maybe poetry readings need to change a little bit. So I kind of welcome that. And yeah, so I am in Berlin right now, and it's interesting being here and reading the news and talking to my friends, and actually I've become kind of obsessed with the news now in ways that I never had before. So the first poem I'm going to read is a poem to America. So here it is. America. My love is green pennies resting at the bottom of your throat, the same well I once used for wishing. I chant an earthquake. I chant of shifting plates, but rulers sleep in Richter stillness. America. Why a person with a goat tied to his belt and an air of delusion? Why unsnap heads and roll them in a game of dice? A black rectangle of glass frames 13 blue windows where bodiless men are taken after being beaten. Two vatos smoke beneath frescoes of Aztecs in loincloths and women bent over metates. They don't remember ever holding the sun in one hand, only the letting go of a tiny hand. This poem electrocutes the lies hidden in night fronds. This poem volt boats the red dwarf of complacency and whittles God into a black hole. Every night, a stray calico mews over a dead fish offering. I comb my hair with the bone left there. The ruler speaks with a mouth full of rabbits. His followers are tree roots, choking the Warrens. America, your face is razor wired. Your people are a lake shaken by an insect wind, hums, stops, hums again. Ruler of grass in a penny toss, you know what side you're on, half spinning through the air. But wishes are for suckers, and I'll be a flute for no man. Only a hum in the mist of the sunlit choir of your undoing, because to hold the note longest determines the day. Remember, tyranny can herd small birds into thick reeds. where they become lost in a frenzy. When they find each other again, they don't recognize foe from friend. Remember, silence has roots, is made manifest in the swallow's nest my landlord tried to destroy and who only stopped when I started shouting. Remember, regret is an opera with no audience. And my next poem also has to do with some of the disturbing events that have happened over the last year, but have really been happening for so long. And this poem deals with issues of white supremacy, and it's called The Swans of Berlin. On a bridge over a canal in Kreuzberg, snow everywhere, and below a game of swans purling themselves onto the water's inky nape. In the winter, I almost died. I smiled. I woke early and left my lover's bed to slide on ice-gilded cobblestones back to the bridge, where I slowly traced their web tracks like kites on the frosted bank. I returned early each day and came to know one pair, called them Henry and Anais, because the male blustered and busked, and the female carved shapes in the water like runes on each cloud's reflection. In the year I suffered but did not die, they often made me cry. I could see the dead swans like two cream puffs, pollocked and still, feathers frothing on the wind. No, like two swans, beaten and wrung. I stood frozen on the bridge. The water slushed by. Then I began to scream. It being Berlin, everyone pretended not to notice until they noticed the two dead swans. Fear hung about us like ghost apples. The sky opened a snowy glove. Flakes caked my eyes. Still, I could see. Still, I stood on the bridge. People walked over then, a small crowd like bits of kindling, circling each bird, a child crying, then police sirens and lights. Swans don't just sing when they die. They hiss, they grunt, they snort, and mute swans, they're the noisiest of all. The police report said, 2 young men. It did not say that on a Friday night full of fuck or fight, 2 skinheads stumbled to the water's edge with a bat, killed Anais, killed Henry, then sweated and said, fuck yeah. No chill wind for them. They clinked beers, smoked cigarettes, then slept in a halo of exhaustion. The haunting hadn't started yet for them, the waking to the sound of wing beats of the 2 swans just gone. And continuing on my swan theme, and I think I too will have many birds featured in my poems. I am somewhat of a freak for birds, and the swans here are just amazing. You know, they're in the canals everywhere, but also out in the fields. And so this is a kind of and there's lakes all around in Berlin, like small lakes and big lakes. And not far from where we are now, there's a small lake, and this is a poem about that. It's called A Swan in the Lake. Today, the snow didn't stick, just the cold, like icy sap in the marrow. House sparrows root through crunchy mud. A woman on a pink bike rides by with her furry hood up. I do not think about that frail woman in the purple paisley scarf staring back at me last summer. Instead, I pull a wool cap over my too thick boy hair and walk to the lake and its willow in the middle of Berlin, where one swan bobs its head up and down, and feel the wafer of a small sun at the back of my tongue. And I'm Mexican on my father's side, and I've did a series of poems last December, every day for the 12 days of Christmas. I did a chant for the children on the US-Mexico border. And this is a poem that, it's a poem I wrote this summer, but it also has to do with the children that are on the border. And it's called Pentamento. There are paintings behind this painting where her body is not on cement, where there are no bruises. The last moments before sleep, the detention center is covered in thick paint, a canvas overflowing with almond blossoms and pink skies. Sleep is a lantern stretching light through the deep. She parses out salt words with parched lips, syllables of mist and sea foam, and a sob no one hears. Voices on the surface. She shivers in a dress of fishing nets. Her heart is pierced through like a brooch on a broken wing. She wakes and her womb contracts, taut and unyielding like the officer's orders. Returns to the nebula where nations have no borders. The dream is a slow undulation of waves. Humpbacks ride as they migrate to plastic islands. She beads a necklace of dead minnows when her son is taken away. A torrent of orders floods the banks, tears the child from the only country he's ever known, his mother's arms, like meat from a bone. The starving dog won't let her sleep. Thoughts ascend the full moon's ladder, but there's nothing at the top, just empty sky. She's a starving dog, no, a humpback, no, the mother whose child has been taken in a nation-building game. There is a poem behind this poem where night boats are berthed, waiting to take the children away. And this one, returning to Berlin, is called A Lamentation of Swans. Outside of Berlin, in the Lake Country, my headlights flash on swans' wobbling necks as they alight and waddle through monoliths of hoarfrost. The field is pregnant in its paws, a tuft of last year's crop stubborn in its snowy mitten. No evil in the world at this moment, no suffering or envy or pain, just the gossip of the swans as they complain. And Danusha, I'm sorry for the loss of your mother, and I hold my heart to your heart because I lost my mother 2 years ago, and I'm just beginning to process it. And it takes a long time, and maybe I never will. But it's something that I have written a lot about, and I want to share a few of those poems. The first one is called The Omen, Must Be, from the great blue heron in my backyard. My mother says it must be an omen, but of what? She doesn't know. Terminal cancer, she's become a shaman of what's between the sea and the landing. We're binge watching Breaking Bad. All doctors want us to radiate. fade away and radiate. A Blondie song from the 80s pipes through my head. She's home now, not a metaphor, but a 3 hours drive from here into a polluted wasteland of petroleum, pesticides, and tumbleweeds. A place where a great blue heron would never live, only migrate through. My house is on a creek that trickles, sometimes torrents, to the ocean's maw. Now it's meandering. The bathymetry has changed since last year. 2 trees fell in my yard. On Easter, a spruce crashed the trellis, shaved the cherry. When the cottonwood smashed the tea roses, they were unthwarted. Lots of light now, more birds. The house finches returned a nest in the barbecue. The Stellar's jays returned a nest in the bottle brush, not their usual stupid choice of the patio umbrella, though they did leave a few twigs there for their gods. And the great blue heron, a first-time visitor, a portent, an omen, she says. The heron, who suffers no fool, flies past my line of vision to the sea. Great sweeps of wing close enough to tease a strand of hair from my face. Over my shoulder, a shudder of air as all the mourning doves tear out of the sycamore. A sound like the god's shrill laughter, a chilling sound. An omen, she says. There is a nest I built inside myself on a rocky perch. To love is to borrow a future sorrow made of sticks and hair and spit. The weight. The night's weight is the ocean's easy burden. Pearls are a weight in the beggar's pocket when he searches for bread. The reassurance of the lighthouse and the tap of the otter eating abalone or semaphores of sorrow. The sear of my dying mother's face, another kind of weight, like a necklace of tongues. Unspeakable the burden of her pain, her hands curled like daylilies. The moon writes on the sea in a language I cannot decode. The moon's weight is the ocean's easy burden, but the weight of her silence can be unbearable as I walk the clock face of this land, watch as her footprints disappear in wet sand. The body's horizon is the sea frothing into pelicans bobbing out on the tidal line, a doily of foam across the full moon's beam. Grief does not close its door, only unhinges the bolts from certainty. And this is a poem that I found when I was asked by someone for some poems, and I didn't even remember that I wrote it. And I wrote it right after my mother died, and it's called Juniper Berries. There's a juniper framed in my window in Charlottenburg. Beyond, a street of leafy trees, a natural food store, the Friseur, a song carried up here, someone whistling on the veldt. No tinny digital sound, just breath and lips and waves to carry. Today I sit at my desk, 3,000 miles from where I watched you die. That Schrodinger's cat existence each time I walked into your bedroom. My sister and I drinking wine that tasted of California. Days became nights, became the last week, which never ended until it did. Sunset in the desert reflected off the oil dicks that night. My sister's face beautiful in her misery, in the Nirvana t-shirt she stole from her son. Springtime. Now I'm in Berlin with the juniper tree, motherless child on a leafy street. I can't call you up and be irritated. What I didn't know then and what I know now is that your annoying phone calls were my comfort. 4 months ago, we listened to the sound for Out of Africa, your favorite. I read from Corinthians, and you finished the verse and said, no more stories. You were scared. So I stopped and I gave you some morphine. And that last look you gave me, when you looked and recognized me, the sweetest smile, a relief before you plunged back into the gloam. For a moment, the whole world, just you and me and the death to come. So one of my friends, my poems are all really depressing. But this poem I wrote for a friend who was going, a 37-year-old woman who was going through breast cancer, and I want to dedicate it to my friend Katie Ferris, who is now going through chemotherapy for breast cancer. It's called Gold in the Cracks. You are not an experiment. Make sure everyone knows this about you, especially those who propose to help you. You are not a fallow field to be acted upon, or a goat tied in front of a house in the desert. You are the explosion that destroyed you and then spared you. You are the dew you sweated and reabsorbed, the water wheel that keeps the river you are flowing upstream, downstream. You are a lightning storm over a cliff of cornflowers. It's what has already healed you. Your suffering is not a burden that I carry or you carry curled up like a parchment of pain. Unfurl yourself onto another plane of your brilliant self. You are the gold in the cracks of your cracked up self. This does not make you the monster. You are not some doctor's creation. Remember who you are. This will be difficult with a bald head and no eyebrows, but you're still you, Tiger Lily. Nothing can take away what you refuse to give up. And now I think I'm probably running out of time, but I want to end with a poem, a California poem, that I wrote in Big Sur, where I did a lot of work for many years with the Henry Miller Library. And I wrote it on a really beautiful day, unlike the summer of fire and smoke and terror. And it's called What the Condor Saw in Big Sur. And I want to dedicate this to Nico, who's the baby condor who on the explore.org cam, his tree burnt up where he was nesting, and they didn't know what happened to him, but they found out that he's okay. So I would like to end on a joyous note. And this is called What the Condor Saw in Big Sur. At the edge, spotted stones and roiling kelp. The day facets me in its diamond. Wind chimes are silent. Buddha's stone head bows. A gap in the fence could tell. Mouth opens, closes on a dahlia, on a rose bush, stripped to thorns. A beheaded sunflower stem holds a hummingbird's silhouette. Bees comb and primp the blonde sky. Waves fall down, spotted stones and roiling kelp. Shadows slink and slip with the earth's music. With a mouth full of stones, I sing. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I loved your line, nothing can take away what you refuse to give up. It was just beautiful. And your line about regret being an opera without an audience. These are fantastic. And the wafer of a small sun on the back of your tongue. I mean, there's so much. That's a communion wafer of a wholly different kind. Holy stuff, I guess, maybe in both ways. And then the image of the only country that the little child has ever known on the border is her mother's arms. Just beautiful imagery. Thank you so much. It's been great. I think this is one of the nicest afternoons we've had, along with many other nice ones. I know it makes me want to just sit down and start writing some poetry. I think to the extent that happens, you really succeeded, at least as far as I'm concerned. Thank you both very much. It's been great. We will do this again in person at some point down the road. We don't know when the new normal is normal. And Maria, you hopefully will be back here by then, perhaps. And Danusha, you could come down from Santa Cruz. But in the meantime, this has been a wonderful afternoon. And appreciate you folks, both of you, with your terrific poetry, your magical gift with words, and your openness, the way you open to us in your poems. Thank you. And thank you, everybody else, for being here. I see, David, you've joined us. Good to have you. Invite you to our next reading, which is Sunday, October 11th, again via Zoom. Nils Peterson and Ken Weisner, two other gifted poets. So, let the good times roll. It's really happening. Please, in the meantime, stay in touch via our Facebook page, Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium, and Old Capital Books, with whom we do sponsor this. They are not open now, but they have been dear and wonderful friends and supporters all along. And so we give them a shout out, and we hope and pray that the economy allows them to resume a more normal life as well. So thank you all, and bless you. And it's been great to be with you this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing some or all of you again next month on October 11th. Thanks again. Take care.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Tanisha, Maria.
Thank you. Great afternoon. Making us cry all the time.
That's good. It's a good release.